Hey, I'm going to do another public video. I've been doing a bunch because I like doing updates for people who aren't in my paid private trading group because you guys might be newer traders. You can't afford to join a group like mine or somebody else's. And I don't just share my trades. I mentor and teach people, and I like sharing that information with people in the public too, even though I don't get into it as much, and I certainly don't do one-on-one phone calls or live streams and detailed educational content. At the very least, I can give you quick updates where I show you what I'm thinking and kind of introduce you to my model. Plus, it might entice you to join my group, which would be really awesome and a great way to support me. I'd appreciate it if you guys want to do that, but no pressure. If you're not ready, it's totally cool. Anyway, quick update. If you watched my last few videos, great. If you haven't, I would encourage you to watch them in order from yesterday afternoon to now. I did a bunch of short, quick little video updates. Watch them, and you can see how things progressed over time. Virtually every tiny little detail that I predicted happened exactly, precisely, flawlessly as I had modeled it. It's not because I have a time machine, although I do joke that my technical analysis and other data analysis models are like a time machine because it allows me to predict the future, but it's not literally what we're dealing with here. What we're dealing with here is just a great model that happens to be working very well. We had the big dump. At certain points throughout that dump, my model suggested, hey, we're not going to continue dumping here. We're going to go back up. The thing is, when you have some supersized, massive sell-off that's based on bad news and FUD and some sort of market manipulation, it doesn't matter what your models say, you're still going to go down. So we had that big dump regardless of what my model said, but as soon as we stabilized, that model became very accurate again. And now, since that bottom, it's been spot on. I drew this orange line again right at the start. So far, it's playing out exactly as I predicted with that little retrace, and now we're starting that next leg up, right? But yesterday, to get into more details, specifically last night, like 3, 4 a.m. my time, I did a video where I said, we're going to retrace right here. Then when we got down to this point, I said we might wick down to this trend line support, but all the other assets, all the altcoins, everything you look at, when you look at algo, RSR, everything, right, is identical to the Bitcoin chart except that second dip right here, the third dip really, because the first one was the original bottom over here on the left. But we bounced off of this trendline support, came back down and tested it. Same thing with RSR. Same thing with JST and whatever else is below it. Doge, LTC, with all these, right? You can see we had the bottom down here. If I drew a trend line here, screw it, I'll draw it. If I draw the trend line right here, you can see the exact same thing. Just like that. Exactly what I showed you on the other charts. Almost all of them are identical. And that confirms that your model is accurate. When you see that, because you're getting what I call confluence, but multi-asset confluence, where you're seeing the same charts coming forward on multiple different assets and pairings, and you can identify a pattern very accurately that way. So that model was very accurate. And last night, as we dipped off of this trend line support, I said we're going to see a bullish reversal on everything, and we're going to go back up, and I'll probably wake up to some green candles, and that's exactly how it played out. However, now you'll notice on the Stochastic oscillator, one of my other key models, bottom to top, it has that wave structure. Now look here. Bottom on the price to the top of the price, to the bottom of the price to the top of the price. Exactly what we're seeing on the Stochastic. We're seeing that exact same wave structure form in the price action, one for one. Now, the big dump last time was big enough that this bounce up hasn't completely erased that dump. So we're getting up to this resistance here on this particular chart, JST, at like 72.60. And if I look at other stuff like BTC, you'll see in this particular case, we got a bigger bounce up off the bottom, and that's probably because we didn't get all the way to that trend line. So if I was looking purely at the alts, I don't think the alts are as bullish as the majors, and this is why. This is the key to look for. Even though I like Algo and RSR, all the ones I just showed you, the bounce here, right, this latest green bounce, exactly as I predicted it, wasn't taking us to new highs above this prior top. But if you look at the majors, we actually are seeing that. Not in all of them, but especially BTC, which usually drives those market trends. If you look at Bitcoin, we had this dip I predicted and this bounce I predicted. And since we've reached the top of that bounce, we got to the top, and you see the Stochastic here, how the Stochastic went up. So we went up, and then started going down, and the price started turning red for a second. Well, then the price actually stopped going down and started just moving sideways along this yellow line. That's the 55 EMA and the bottom of the cloud. So that's a resistance zone right there. It's trying to break through. When you hit resistance at the same time that the Stochastic hits a top and starts turning down, usually you're going to dump back down. So I would have expected it to go up like this, down, up like that, down. The fact that we're moving sideways and holding so well means while we can still dip, there's a really good chance we could push up above that 55 EMA. If that happens, we're going back up into the 40K range on Bitcoin. So that's something to be excited about. The fact that the Stoke is this high and it hasn't come back down yet and the price hasn't come back down yet suggests we could potentially be going into a hyper bullish chart. When you're hyper bullish, that happens when the Stoke oscillator here is riding really high in this overbought range, and it's really anything over 70. So right now it's at 72 to 75. When the Stoke oscillator is riding at that high level, but it doesn't come back down as this wave structure did before. If you look all the way back, you can see, I'm just going to go fly back a little bit on the Bitcoin chart, and you'll see something like this, right? Over here, we got up really high, and then it started to dip slightly, but then it just moved sideways until it eventually did dip. If you go and find the price back then, you'll see we had a nice bullish move up, right? So you got up, started from the bottom, nice bullish move up, you got to the top, and instead of dipping right away, you continued upward up here, right? So that's a much smaller scale example of essentially what you're expecting to see here, if that holds, right? So if we continue sideways and we don't actually come back down, we could be sitting on a really nice breakout run up that'll really speed up this recovery process, because I was expecting a solid green recovery weekend, assuming we don't get any negative news in FUD. Now, what do I see that's bearish? The one thing I'll point out is that Bitcoin, not so much, but the other assets, you do have a little bit of head and shoulders forming, but you also kind of, on Bitcoin, you have an inverted head and shoulders a little bit. Now, the last thing I wanted to point out on this, because this is interesting. Let me show you the difference. Let me move stuff around on here. Where's the drawing thing? Oh, there we go, brush, sorry. So on this, we have a little bit of a dip, move up, another shoulder, and then we're going up. You kind of see that inverted head and shoulders. Now take a look at, what was it? Algo was one. There was a couple that I was looking at where you could kind of see the formation of an inverted, or of a regular head and shoulders. Maybe it was a different time frame, and that's why. I'm not seeing it now. Sorry, I'll do another update later if I pick up on that again. But I could have sworn on one of the charts I saw a regular head and shoulders, which does look a little bit bearish normally, although I'm not seeing it now. So I might have been looking at a different time frame. I'll do another update video if I see that formation coming together again. But as of right now, that's not necessarily a bearish indication either. So forget about that. I'm not worried about that at this point. Instead, yeah, I'm just going to keep focusing on exactly what I was talking about, which is those bullish formations. I'm not seeing anything as particularly bearish in this case, except for the reversal on the Stoke. You can see the formation of one new trend line starting, and that's probably going to be relevant. Let me show you that, and then I'll let you guys go. So if I do a trend line here, so we have the main trend line, now this second trend line right here, just like that, right? So the main trend line is what I showed you on the alts, where we had this dip here and then this dip here, and now this candle here held right at this first green trend line, and then we didn't get all the way down to the trend line here. Instead, we actually held 3 candles in a row at this newer trend line, shorter term, right? That trend line takes us up, right up here, right where this cloud comes down, the bottom of the cloud. Let me zoom in. So the bottom of the cloud and the 55 EMA, the yellow line, are strong resistance. That's coming along this trajectory. That's taken us right into that trend line. So we might actually continue along this exact sideways path for another few hourly candles. And if that happens, that's going to be the point where it makes a choice. Either it hits the bottom of the cloud and the 55 EMA on the top, right? And that's pushing it down. See how we can't break above it? That's forcing us down. So that's resistance. This trend line support is support pushing us up. So we're going to have the opposing forces, that upward push and that downward push, are going to occur right in this zone, right over there, and that's going to be the apex. It's an apex right here. That's the apex zone for this wedge or triangle formation, depending on how it ends up playing out. Once we get in there, we're going to see it indecision time, and it's going to make its move. It's either going to break out into the cloud and above the 55 EMA, in which case it goes straight up into the 40,000s, or it's going to dump down and we're going to get that retrace back into the lower 30s. And if that happens, I don't even think we're going to go back below the prior low. I bet we end up holding at 35K, but we are going to get at least some short-term dip before it can make another move up. Overall, I'm still extremely bullish about this recovery, though. I talked about this in detail in my prior few videos from last night and yesterday afternoon. So again, I'd encourage you to go back and watch those. And a quick reminder, I already said it at the beginning, but don't be cheap. If you want to support me and if you appreciate my work, I would love for you to join my group. Obviously, I take tips and donations and stuff to help me spend more time helping people and educating people and mentoring people. But if you're in a position to join my private trading group, and you can actually learn my models and my techniques and strategies, I would much rather you do that than just send me money. Don't just send me a tip. If you could join my group and actually benefit from it, if you can learn, be part of a community, work with other people. Plus, Jack Dorsey's a douchebag who banned me from Twitter, and they keep suspending my accounts anytime I get up to a couple thousand followers. So it's not worth investing my time rebuilding, and I don't have the reach and influence I used to. So I'd really appreciate it if you guys could help me out and throw me some support. But if not, definitely subscribe and come back for all the free crap I put out there too. Pay attention to what's going on. Watch this zone. It's going to be crucial. If we make it that far, we might make a decision before then. And obviously, trade safe, as always. Thanks, guys.